Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you. My name is Lubna Bouza. I'm the head of business and news at Sky News Arabia, and it's my absolute pleasure to be here and to moderate this panel at the AI House in Davos. Ladies and gentlemen, governments around the world are under growing pressure to do more with less, and to do it faster, fairer, and with greater accountability. Citizens today do not just compare public services to the services of other governments. They actually compare it to the real-time, personalized experience they get from private sector. That is where AI enters the conversation, not as a silver bullet, but as a powerful enabler. This session explores how AI can help governments move from reactive systems to services that are real-time, productive, and genuinely citizen-centric. We will examine how data and AI can be used to anticipate citizen needs before problems escalate, how to design AI systems that improve trust and user experience without reinforcing inequality or bias, and how governance, accountability, and transparency must be built into public sector AI from day one. We will also look at the institutional side of the challenge, what governments need to do in terms of skills, digital infrastructure, and policy frameworks to scale AI responsibly, and why global cooperation and shared standards are becoming critical as those technologies, ladies and gentlemen, cross borders faster than regulations do. I am very lucky to be joined by speakers who are rightly positioned to discuss those points and to answer our questions. So to my left, His Excellency Mohamed bin Taliah, Chief of Government Services, UAE Government, Thomas Prama Ta, CEO Presite, Joël Penou, Chief AI Officer at Cohere, and Carolin Wittmann, co-founder, European Institute for Future Generations. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. I'm very pleased that we have two women on this panel, because usually I always moderate panels with men. So ladies, two ladies and two gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Mohamed, let's dive right in. I've mentioned how the expectations of citizens change. Mm-hmm. In your mind, what has pushed for that transformation, for that shift in the demand of citizens? And how do you think that shift in the demand and the requirement of citizens impacted the way government do services today? And design them, probably.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think, we'd call it a shift in demand, because citizens always want more. Mm-hmm. And if we focus on an average, a lot of citizens do not expect much from governments, because they say, this is the government and private sector are different. We in the UAE have a different narrative for this, and we say that we need to have we are competing with the last digital experience that our customers go through. And who are our customers? Our residents, our citizens, visitors, tourists that come to the UAE. Mm-hmm. Imagine that today our citizens can buy stuff from across the world with a click of a button. How can a government service look like to compete with such a digital experience? Mm-hmm. This is where the mission and the work that we are working on in the UAE today comes from. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Developing and creating and designing digital experiences that are at par with what people experience. Mm-hmm. in other sectors, if not even better. Because government does have the right data in place. Mm-hmm. that can be utilized to serve people better, make their life easier, mm-hmm. and let them be busy with what matters most to them.
Mm-hmm. Thomas, let me bring you in because what Mohamed said is very important. And I think the question here is how to make those services, when you design them, visible and valuable to citizens. And as he mentioned, it's really difficult when you compare government services to private sector services. My question to you, when you look across governments at very different stages of digital maturity, and you've worked with many, and now you're working in the UAE that is really advanced when it comes to technology and AI-enabled services. What separates AI initiatives that remain experimental from those who actually reach the stage where they are proper services citizens actually feel and rely on?
I think, first and foremost, Mohamed didn't quite give himself credit. Mohamed leads an amazing team to drive the adoption of not just AI, but digital transformation across government services. And his point is right. Citizens are our largest critic. We ourselves, we use from one app to the other. We expect the same experience. I think where the difference is, and what the EU has done really well, is goal setting. You set the goal. We were first with customer happiness, citizen happiness index. We were first with the AI ministry to the goal that the visionary leaders set is the first thing. So what do you want to achieve with the citizens? The second piece of work that we do very well in the UAE is one, the technology needs to be invisible. The AI needs to be invisible. The AI needs to be useful. And very examples that I've showed, last year, the UN awarded TAM the UAE Citizen Services Award, the best e-government application.
Actually, speaking of TAM, I invite everyone to check TAM app. That is a government service, actually providing services to around 3.5 million citizens in the UAE. You really need to see it. You really need to check it. They have every service you would probably need on whether it's government, real estate, education, anything.
And voila, see a very satisfied citizen. The key thing about that, I think there are 7,000 services, sitting on infrastructure powered by Azure, right? Consuming AI services. Last year at GITEX, they launched that, if you ever have to renew your licenses or certificates or education, do it once and forget about it. Right, that's very useful. You don't be reminded to do it. You find services. We have a GPT chat, that works with you on your application, reminds you. When you start using something so useful that is embedded in your daily life, you forget about where's the AI, where's the technology. You're thankful that the interface is good. You're thankful that it responses, gives you the right direction. And I think that's the design principle that UAE has taken. It's not just about the application. If you zoom out what the UAE has done with the leadership and what the team that Mohamed leads, you can't just design companies that do good applications. You need to surround that ecosystem, right? So Presight is very fortunate to be part of the G42 ecosystem. For the last 7 years, we've been building out through with the leadership, not just companies, but an ecosystem. So down from infrastructure level, where we're building the AI cluster between the US and UAE campus, models that we are building out of inception. We release models that are the first Arabic large language model we've done for Kazakh and Hindi. And then you build companies on top of it that manage GP as a service and application companies like Presight. The goal is to make something sustainable, but create an ecosystem that supports that, right? So that every goal that Mohamed has shared earlier in the speaker's room, that for every chief AI officer that we've put in place in every agency, they are not alone, and therefore they're supported by the larger ecosystem. And therefore, the goals that they set for TAM, for Abu Dhabi Police, for Dubai government, and this afternoon you and I are on a panel for the latest regulatory intelligence framework, so that such initiatives can become, can be actualized and supported.
Exactly. That's amazing that you've mentioned that particular app, because, Joelle, my question here, when you design those services, there is a challenge. How can you keep the privacy of the government data without slowing down the innovation?
Yep. I think it's an interesting question, and I've, recently, a few months ago, joined Cohere, which is an enterprise that, was sort of founded on the hypothesis that this was possible, first of all, and second, that there was a need for this. And we've seen so much AI that's happening on the cloud, and it's powering a ton of new innovation. But there are a lot of cases where actually security and privacy are top of mind. Some of them are regulated industry. We think about financial services, healthcare, or so on. It is not a choice. It's not an opt-in condition to offer that level of guarantee in terms of privacy and security. It's actually required from the beginning, and so you have to approach that in the design of the system. And so, I mean, Cohere has done that in a few different ways. One of them is to focus on on-premise deployments. So the AI system is deployed within the application case, within government system, within banking systems, so on and so forth. It does require a certain level of ability to sort of host that technology, plan for the capacity for it, and so on and so forth. So it becomes a shared responsibility in a sense. But the AI platform, in this case, it's an agentic AI platform. So there's some chat functionalities, there's some agentic, the ability to build agents specific to the use case, there's some orchestration tools and so on and so forth. All of that has to be encapsulated in a way that doesn't allow the information to leak, even to the people who are designing the platform. And so, you know, I would say early on, all of the deployments were on-premise. Now, there's definitely a need to have some hosted solutions with private cloud and so on and so forth. And that's probably what's going to be the ability to scale to all these enterprises that don't necessarily have that in-house.
Sovereign clouds.
What's really interesting is when you give that level of thought to notions of, in this case, security and privacy, you actually give also a lot of control on other variables that enterprises and governments care about. For example, the ability to control your trade-off on performance versus efficiency. This is something in many cases you don't control that when you're using some of the cloud solutions. In this case, you have the ability to control that trade-off, and it becomes very interesting because, you know, while everyone is running pilots with a few hundred employees and so on, the compute costs are not necessarily top of mind. But when you try to scale that to millions of citizens, when you're scaling that to tens of thousands of employees, it's a completely different ballgame. And there's many cases where, you know, for it, you're interested in a different, you know, point in the performance compute cost.
And of course, choices made by the government today will echo for years to come. On that point, Carolin, what questions should policymakers be asking now to ensure AI-driven services create long-term public value and protect citizen rights 20 or even 50 years from now?
I think value is always a really easy and, on the other hand, really hard word because it can mean everything you want it to mean, whether financial value or personal value, business value. And I think since it's so diverse and individual, we have to create a common base, a common ground where everything can happen and where everyone can create the value they want to create. And for me, part of that fruitful soil is media literacy, because I think it also, or AI literacy, as you want to say, because I also think it really breaks open these knowledge silos in the different branches, because when they know, hey, how can I use the knowledge and the unique skill set I have with AI and these technologies, for example, civil servants, I think it becomes really fruitful and people lose the fear of AI. They dare to become innovative, and it awakes a really creative spirit. And I think since you're also talking about 20 to 50 years, I mean, those are like 4 generations. So I think the knowledge and the curiosity has to be passed down for generations to also carry that long-term impact, to also make the children curious, hey, it's a playground, what can I do? And also what does the government enable me to do? And see that as a part of a really agile environment. And so to say, if you want to speak about public structure or government structures in general, I think agility and strategic foresight has really become a crucial factor in staying agile and being able to adapt to the massive innovations which are happening. We can talk about horizon scanning or scenario planning, saying, hey, where can we go? Where do we want to go? What actually is our fear? What risk are we willing to take? And I think if you combine all of that, it's going to be, you can really talk about long-term impact. And yesterday I was at the Doha Forum at Invest Qatar, and the executive director said something which really inspired me. He said, when there's no trust, there's no cooperation. And I think he was talking about geopolitical stuff, but I think you can also apply it to our relationship with AI. We have to build on media literacy, AI literacy, to understand it, to be able to judge it and to trust it, and therefore use it as a tool which accelerates innovation.
Thank you. And I think it's very, very important that we are able to move from vision to implementation. And Mohamed, I think I have to bring you here because what you have done in the UAE is amazing. And I want to understand what are the main pillars, factors that helped you turn your AI ambitions to what we call now a nationally deployed citizen-facing services.
First, I would say we need to have the right vision, and our leadership, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed and Sheikh Highness Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, had the vision long time ago that AI is going to be part of the future of the nation and of humanity overall. And we had started building the foundations starting from 2017 by the appointment of the first minister, AI minister in the world. From there, we have started working on skilling, getting the right understanding, not only to the people that work on development and deployment, but also at the leadership level and at the ministerial level to understand what can AI do. I would say after that, we took a step forward and we built the courage to experiment fast and fail fast. So we need to put in a framework as nations to be able to experiment with different tools, with different AI models, what can be done and what can't be done. The UAE has developed its own LLMs, such as JACE, Falcon, Think K2 Think, and these models have been deployed in different scenarios. But also we are open to using other models from around the world that we've been testing with and experimenting. I'd give you examples of certain success stories. For example, for visa applications today, there is a lot of manpower and time and resources that are utilized just to review the applications, and that includes, looking at passport copies, looking at documents that are from different countries around the world. We have more than 200 nationalities in the UAE, and handling that needs a huge manpower, huge resources. 2 years ago, we deployed an AI agent that helps with reviewing these documents. And we've been, when we first started, we started with just 10% of the documents. The rest, humans are looking at them. And we kept increasing them as we started trusting the system that it is getting it right. And today, we're doing 98% of these transactions and the review by the system with human in the loop to take samples to verify that this work has been done correctly. I'll talk about the time and the savings, not only on the government, but also on citizens. It used to take 4 to 7 days to complete a review of a visa and get the approval and go to the next step and the next step. Now it takes only 5 minutes.
Wow.
So look at what artificial intelligence can give us. And this translates directly to positive impact on customers. And that's what we aim for in the UAE.
Amazing. Mohamed, let me bring you Thomas, because you have something to say here, I'm sure, because you've been part of the journey.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And remember we said it's about setting the telemetry. And when this visa program started, it wasn't about bringing it down to 5 minutes. Right? It was improve it. And this is really where the difference is. the UAE and the organizations in the adoption of citizen services is willing to experiment. And we're also willing to accept less than perfect.
Yes.
Right, so, Mohamed and I were part of a government retreat, and we said something. If you take a pilot today, any AI pilots, right, it comes to the first 40% is amazing. Right, everyone say, let's do it. We're going to put this in production, and then whoever is applying the trade will say, yes, no problem, we'll get it done. The agents will work in this way, and then you push it up to 80%. And very often that's the point where you hit with the stakeholders, and they say it's too much. It can't replace the workflow. It's not good enough. It needs to be scrapped. And that came all the MIT reports and everyone that 95% of pilots, die. And where is the true value of AI? Your example was that when you adopt it, you're willing to accept it at 85%. That's the first mindset you change. You keep an eye on the goal, but you continue to apply. And then when we started, even for Abu Dhabi in Pre-Site, for instance, we do not just for the citizens, we do for the accounting authority. We started with foundation AI models, OCR, machine learning, before generative AI came. And we continue to apply. And for the accounting authority, we used to do 10% sampling of audit content, audit documents. Now do it 100%. Instead of 15 days, do it 1.5 days. But the AI, the technology within has changed. We went from OCR to annotation to large language models, reading the documents and ingesting it. But the path remains the same. Can we do a much shorter time for data ingestion? Can we do stronger audits? Can the entire process be frictionless for the citizens and the companies that are submitting? I think that is the key difference to the success that UAE has done. We're willing to experiment. We can accept less than perfect because we're not afraid to fail. But we continue to set goals. Right? And in 4 incrementals, 4 sprints, we get there. And in the whole period of time, the users, the citizens, continue to feel an improvement. And I think that is the key part of it. And of course, trust, collaboration moves at the speed of trust. Yeah. So every iteration, it gets better. It serves the purpose, and you continue to believe in it, and then that's really the cycle of it. So it's not a magic wand, you get it there, but it's consistent, willing to accept, imperfection, but willing to tune it further.
And delivery side is actually where many governments struggle. And on that point, Joel, moving from language model pilot to a mission-critical public system is huge. I want you to tell us what are the essential technical steps that government should not skip, and they cannot afford to skip.
Yeah. I think often, it starts with the data. So having a strategy in terms of what data will be used. There's the technical aspects, but there's also a lot of aspects that are more in terms of, what is your approach in terms of the standards to adopt in terms of privacy and so on and so forth. So having a clear data strategy is going to be really important. And then it may sound a little bit odd, but I'm going to bounce off this idea of telemetry, which is, being very clear about what you're going to evaluate. The ability to assess, verify, validate is probably the most important thing in the system. And for that reason, it's important to pick cases where you have the ability to do that. Sometimes people think, oh, I have a process here, that process is broken, therefore I'm going to bring AI to fix a broken process. That's not going to work. AI can't go fix a broken process because you don't know what quality looks like. Picking a process where you already have strong quality metrics means that you can monitor continuously whether the AI is actually satisfying the task or not. So data evaluation is usually when we do these kinds of deployments, the initial language. Even inside the company, we have a research team, we have a modeling team, we have a product team, we have a sales team. The language between these teams for companies such as Cohere, which is grounded on AI, it's the language of data and evaluation.
Nice.
That is the API between the teams in terms of how the work connects with each other. There is, of course, all the work of building up the solutions. That was previously the most intensive work. We, pulled together teams of engineers and so on and so forth. In many ways, once you've done a really good job on the data and on the evaluation, that work actually becomes quite a bit easier. The productivity of that has been scaled. The ability to do development, software development, much faster, is scaling rapidly as long as you can validate and verify. The last technical step I'll emphasize is often when you do the model building, you have the pre-training phase, and we talk about the fine-tuning phase.
Yeah.
I want to open up the aperture of that, which is really, essentially like setting the right trade-offs on the system. So when we talk about LLMs, the fine-tuning usually involves, for example, safety considerations, questions of tone, questions of like reducing the number of mistakes, false positive, false negative. But in an overall agentic system, it can be a little bit more broad than that. But it's really this question of, you have a system that can do anything and everything. Getting that part right of how do you tune for performance versus safety versus efficiency versus interaction in your system, both the technical side and the social side, is really important. And in some cases, the evaluation of that is harder because there's things such as productivity metrics. How long does it take to review a visa application that you can have very clear telemetry. There's other things that are a lot more subtle, and so you have to look at the acceptance, the adoption. Usage numbers are really revealing in many cases, and you can look at a lot of information about usage without necessarily revealing confidential information about what's actually being done in the underlying system. So looking at this usage data is actually very revealing.
You make it sound very easy, but it's very, very hard, right? One more point I would like to raise with you, Carolin, ethical principles. I think they are widely agreed on, but it's very difficult to enforce. Which concrete mechanism actually work in translating responsible AI from theory into practice?
Well, it's a very broad field, but I'm going to start with independent audits. I think those are very effective done by SAIs. There was a paper, I think, published 1 month ago by public auditors from, I think it was Germany, Finland, and Norway, and on guardrails how to do these AI audits, and that's why I also think cross-border cooperation is really important. I really advise for that. And I think we shouldn't see it isolated. I think we should combine these independent audits with citizen panels, because in the end, ethics, also very individual, you have to bring the citizens in, because defining what ethics is, you really have to get down to the individual person and let them have a say. And I think with citizen panels, it's a really great way to also get polar opposites into discussion, make it become fruitful instead of polarizing, and also to get a good feeling of what's simmering in the future. Okay, what kind of topics are the people talking about? What are they worried about? But in the end, this is only effective if you really implement it in the policy-making cycle. You have to close the policy action gap. So that's why I also think that these solutions coming from the citizen panels really have to be implemented in the policymaking and the government structure in the long run to be effective and also to be trusted by the citizens. I talked about that. And I think showing algorithmic registries is also a big thing. That's where media and AI literacy comes in again, so people can evaluate these things, can see, okay, what does this mean, how does this work, and trust their government. And so what they see is like, hey, we're part of the future, instead of, oh, the job market is changing, I'm going to be left behind. So they see their place in the future and how they can innovate with their skills and be part of it. And I think that's really important. And Joel, you talked about the technical and security aspect, which is also something we're really working on in our think tank. We're talking about DDPIs. For us, that's decentralized digital public infrastructures. We're talking about crypto technology, because if you look into the future, we have to also talk about quantum computing. And I think there are a lot of possibilities, but also risks coming with that. So in the end, to do these enforceable guardrails, you have to also see the base layer of security. And there was, I think, I don't know when it was published, but it was a paper of the Turku University of Finland, and they talked about an AI hourglass model. So on the top, you have the hard laws and all the policymaking structure, and it trickles down into the structure of the AI and the security management, the risk management, etc. But what I really want to emphasize is the flow of knowledge you always have to reiterate. You have to see, okay, what consequences come from these laws? How do we implement these innovations and stuff? You always have to reiterate, and it's like it's a never-ending process. But so you have to really agitate the people to work on that and be excited for that future.
Yeah, Thomas.
Yeah, just going to add a point that, and then also because the panel discussion about citizen services.
Yes.
And if you look at the last 24 months, 6 months, we've always used, how is AI going to digitize citizen services? And, it's all about AI. But on the point of defining the citizen KPIs, defining what the government and the public service wants to achieve, that has got nothing to do with AI, has got nothing to do yet with, that, or different from how technology is being used from years. I think those has to be spent on, and the time has to be there to define what those are. Then you can see how the regulatory framework, the technology can support that. And I think, by and large, we spend too little time on that, and we're very fixated on where the technology is. And I think if we can take a step, if the organizations take a step to define what the outcome to be, you will realize that you will be able to develop useful services that are trusted, and the technology that can be done is available today. So the concept of applying intelligence today is probably the North Star I would take, and then setting the telemetry or the KPI, then everything will make sense. National frameworks for safeguards, international cooperation, those will make sense, because now my North Star is clear. I'm not focused on the technology, but I'm focused on what I want to achieve.
That's amazing. Give us an example of something you did. Walk us through the experience.
So let me give an example. Quite recently, we announced with the Federal Public Prosecutor Office to develop a first in the world public prosecutor large language model. Right, so that was the frame. But what was the problem? The problem is that we have 200 nationalities that are in the UAE, right? And of course, UAE has been voted as the safest country for many years running. When something happens, there's a choke, because someone who is brought into court or brought under investigation has translation issues, has cultural issues, and there's only so many investigation officers that can process. So what will happen? Someone who's innocent or not innocent will sit in a detention, until one conversation can happen that fits the language, to have the conversation. And, if you're guilty, so you deserve it. But if you're not, can you imagine the trauma you have to sit there?
Exactly.
They want to develop a large language model to understand the individual Emirates law, understand and build it up in 15 languages to start with, so that it could be a tool that helps the existing team of investigation officers to process the cases. When you process cases, what happens? Your detention facilities reduce. The load on deportation or clearing of someone's name reduces. All that mission has got no technology tied to it. And then when we looked at the problem with the federal office, you could use AI, you could use live translation, you could use clarification. So the baseline of someone's understanding of the Emirati law, whether in Dubai, in Sharjah, in Abu Dhabi, is consistent. It may not pass the judgment, but it's going to give you so much faster a response to decide where to put a person in each bucket. Of course, if you're somewhat guilty, stay on. But if you're clearly not, right, and there's a misunderstanding because of a language or understanding, and it goes. Right? To me, it's a very clear North Star, what I want to achieve. Look back and see what technology can be applied. And if you look at live translation, and that's another thing, that live translation is really tough. Near real time is easy. You say something and it comes in. And that technology will evolve. And one day, obstacles that impede by the understanding of language and nationalities, especially in the UAE, will go away.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, this is one example that I can cite.
Thank God I did not use that service. And hopefully I will never be able to, I will never have to use that service. Let me keep using TAM. I'm happy with that, with that government service. Mohamed, I'm going to bring you here. I want you to tell me more about the experience of the UAE and what lessons that can be transferred from your experience, from what you have done so far, what you have achieved, that other governments or countries can benefit from.
Yeah, all of us as humans, we are designers. we design our lives, we design our homes, we design our bedrooms, our living rooms, we design the lives of our kids. We design the way we work. And I believe that there is a true power in the collective knowledge. In the UAE, 2 years ago, the leadership launched the Zero Bureaucracy program. And it's a program that aims to eliminate bureaucracy in the government. And the beauty of this program is that it does not rely on experts or consulting firms, it relies on the designers of the government, the public servants that work there, and the designers of government who are the citizens and residents of the nation. It's a competition. Every government entity, different teams form, and they compete to eliminate bureaucracy. It doesn't matter how they will do it. What matters is that they eliminate it. And there is a reward at the end of the cohort. 7 teams, each team gets a reward of $250,000. It's not given to the government entity or to the leadership, it's given to the team that innovated to eliminate bureaucracy.
Amazing.
And I mentioned that the citizens and residents are designers with us also. So in the first cohort, the highest pain point customers pointed out to us was errors while they're going through systems, slow systems, loading time. A lot of our customers says, you asked me to upload the 2 megabytes file. I don't have that file. It doesn't exist anymore. The smallest one is 10 MB, okay? Which makes sense, you know? And a lot of them said that we have a lot of payment failures. They get to the end and they're like, you know, they see the light at the end of the tunnel and it fails. So His Highness Sheikh Mohammed said, this year we want to eliminate digital bureaucracy. And this is the year 2025. And there is a huge competition happening throughout 2025, that happened throughout 2025 to eliminate digital bureaucracy. And I'll give you one example so that I don't take a lot of your time. We have had a challenge with uploading the personal photo to renew a passport or a visa for more than 5 years. Why? Because there are rules and regulations that are not only UAE rules and regulations, there's a global regulations, because you need to travel with the passport, needs to comply with certain rules and regulations. People's lives were easier when it was before digital, because they go to a camera in the service center, they take a photo and it's compliant, they put it in and everything is fine, okay? Now they take a photo at home and they upload it through the system.
I do that.
Some customers had more than 50 times failed attempts, you know, to upload the photos. So with the eliminating digital bureaucracy, the government entity responsible for that deployed an AI tool that looks at the photo and edits it, fixes it, changes the dimensions, changes some of the things. We put a threshold to how much it can edit. Okay. So we have reduced the failed attempts significantly using AI. It's still improving, but look at this. It looks like a very simple problem, but it took us very long. AI helped us solve it, and there are many cases that are like this. And now people are uploading and are happier. They're less frustrated uploading photos to renew their passports.
As well, when we talk about AI-enabled public services, I think a very important question that we need to ask ourselves, what steps should governments take to ensure transparency, energy efficiency, and reasonable performance across languages and communities?
I mean, that's a broad question, and I suspect at some point they're going to kick us out of this panel. But let me take these 3 points, because I think they're important, especially on the point of transparency.
Yeah.
I think to some degree, a number of people in the community have done a disservice to the community by seeding skepticism about open standards and open source approach to AI.
Yeah.
And I actually think for governments in particular, there's a real advantage to building on open standards. It doesn't mean that all the data is public and so on, but in fact, a lot of the internet was built in terms of having open standards of how information could be shared and circulate. A lot of the initial libraries on AI, PyTorch, for example, are completely open frameworks that allow development to be accelerated across the board. And so over time, I think we need, even as governments, to trust that open standards can actually be part of the solution, that not everything has to be developed between closed doors. And especially when it comes to questions of security, the security community has long resolved this debate. And having open security protocols means that if there are flaws, you learn about these flaws much faster, and that allows you to build robust solutions. And so I think, if I was to pick sort of one misconception that I think is really important in terms of transparency, it is that one. It is to have the confidence to build on open standards when you build your solutions, even for governments. That does not compromise questions of security. In terms of efficiency, I think what's really important, people are so fixated on frontier models, which traditionally are the biggest models. They tend to have, billions of parameters in terms of the architecture. They tend to train on thousands, tens of thousands, soon to be hundreds of thousands of GPUs. That is often not the solution that you need to really make a big difference in terms of the solutions. We need a much more distributed notion of intelligence rather than this monolithic intelligence. There's a sense that AGI will be one thing in one box. That is not how we achieved human intelligence. It is by distribution, by collaboration, and by robustness. And I suspect our AI systems will have much of the same. And so that means exploring what the world looks like when you have hundreds, thousands, millions of models that are deployed, figuring out what are the protocols for interactions, for exchanging information, but also means from an efficiency point of view, it gives you much more ability to control those trade-offs, to look for more efficient solutions. And I'll touch a little bit on this notion of equitable access to AI. I think we've had some really interesting examples. The question of multilingual accessibility is really key. We've seen some spectacular progress in terms of machine translation, in terms of the ability, maybe not full live translation, but certainly the quality of the translation is climbing steadily. It's a world of difference compared to just 5 years. We will continue to see that. We have a lot of work to do to give access to AI technology to low-resource languages in particular. And quite frankly, that's been one of the things at, a small window into the work that we're doing at Cohere. It is to release open-source, efficient, multilingual models. Our Aya family of models has been, in particular, really well received internationally. I think we have a responsibility for governments to deploy these services. It is service to citizens. I'm really impressed with what the UAE is building, and I think many other governments who also serve very diverse populations should embark in terms of having language models that are not unilingual, but actually really provide services across languages.
Thank you, Joelle. Carolin, building on what Joelle said, when we talk about AI for good, I think a couple of things that also we need to focus on. Governments, how can governments guarantee that when they do the AI deployments are also both socially inclusive, that's one point, and the other is environmentally sustainable?
Very good question. I'm directly going to connect to what you said, Joelle, because I think talking about multiple languages, I think it also really has to be deployed in the training data, because language is how we see the world and how we see structures and how we make sense of the world. So I think having a very diverse unbiased set of training data is really important. Also, the OECD suggests a digital divide index. I think I'm really for that, to like assess once in a while, okay, how digitalized is our society and how is the literacy part coming through? How well are we in AI education? Because I think we have to assess this once in a while to really see, okay, where we can predict social divide because people feel left out and then they radicalize, because it's really easy to be appealed by very simple narratives for this very complex world. And if AI is part of this really complex world, it's not going to get any better. And what I already said, like the citizens panel, I think we really have to include these outcomes in the policymaking structure. In general, what we advocate for is also thinking government policy or government voting cycles a bit differently, because if you talked about long-term value and long-term impact, and I think we have to secure that we're building something which can't be destroyed by someone who's coming like in 3 years and say, oh, I don't like that, I'm going to do it differently. Or, hey, I have a better idea, or I have a different idea, that's okay. But I think we really have to plan in the long term to really become good in the global competition. And in the end, coming back to sustainability, I think we talked about the language models. I think SLMs might also be a solution in different areas. I think you really have to assess which kind of AI is needed where, and not just plaster all over it and say, hey, that's the solution for everything. But you have to say, hey, this, we need an LLM, we need an SLM. In general, I really advise the governments invest in green technologies and say, hey, we invest in innovation and it drives the country forward and it makes people excited and makes them feel seen with their entrepreneurial spirit. So I think you really have to take that into account.
I have a question to all of you. What will happen to countries that will not embrace AI-enabled public services now? Mohamed?
I think, you have a choice, governments have a choice. Either a government experiments and moves forward and allow a margin of error and failure and accept it and be at the frontier, or wait for someone else to perfect it but fall behind. I believe that AI, the use of artificial intelligence, not only in governments, but also in all other sectors, brings a very unique competitive advantage. Falling behind means that there will be a lot of catching up that needs to be done, and it might take decades later to catch up. So it makes sense that we need to build the courage to start now, nations around the world, and experiment there, and not fear from having an error here or there. Doesn't matter. That's the journey of life.
Joelle, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's definitely, a clear evidence that is starting to mount in terms of the productivity that is going to be gained. And we have seen in some parts of the world sort of government apparatus get bigger and bigger and quite bloated in some places. And I think there's a responsibility to be as efficient as possible in terms of government's cost efficiency, but also mindful of, the time of the citizens who are interacting with the apparatus. The other point I'd like to emphasize is actually by a government being a very proactive adopter of AI, the government sends a very strong signal to society within their borders, right? Whether it's the enterprises, whether it's the rest of nonprofits and so on, it sends a signal that the technology is beneficial, that the technology can be trusted, that it's worth investing in that technology, that there will be, ability to be compatible with government services if you invest in that. And so that signal may be even more important in terms of productivity. Yes, the government may get more productive, but all of the ecosystem, the industry will get more productive as well. And I think that's a signal that may not be obvious. It's a secondary effect, but it actually can be much bigger. And so I do think it's an important part of the strategy.
Thomas?
Yeah, I think I'd like to take it from a different perspective.
Go ahead.
You know, the question, I think every government wants to do better for the citizens. So again, my goal setting, that's what they want to do.
Yeah. This
The
is what
UA
we think.
Yeah, it starts with the desire, the goal. The UA is fortunate to have the resources, so we put off a AI native government strategy. And then as we described, G42, the UA, we build an ecosystem around it. Most governments want to be technology enabled, and in today's context, AI enabled. Right, and we work across the emerging markets, and not every government has the ability to have access. So there's the applications, the language models, the language being one for equitable access to AI.
It's a huge investment as
And
well.
it is. And so infrastructure becomes the second impedance. Right, I think today, many of you all read, we announced the digital embassies from the G42 ecosystem. Right, fundamentally, it's what we're building in the UAE as infrastructure and compute or intelligence factory that can be used by countries that we can reach. So in our case, it's about 4 billion population across 3,200 kilometer radius of connectivity. These are governments, and these will touch countries and governments that would like to have a piece of technology, that would like to implement AI services, that would like us to live and shift and export TEM to Jordan, for instance, but have not the infrastructure to do it. I think this is what's going to be bridging the divide of equitable access. So what we're doing now with digital embassies, what we're doing with the different languages, large language models that we put up, where we fine-tune to smaller SLMs for the government, applications in the UAE that can be exported. I think if you look at that holistically, I believe every government would like to do better for the citizens. Some have greater access to resources than not. Then you have countries and groups like G42 and UAE that is able to enable that access. Right? So collectively, if you zoom out on the regional and global scale, I think it's going to get a push and pull. The government wants to do it. How do I do it? I build an ecosystem. I look towards the region to see who can help me get there faster. But the eventual goal is I want to build better citizen services. All right? I think that is the key driver of the adoption.
Carolin.
Looking at that on like a global scale, I think when we talk about leaving some countries behind because they're not contributing to the AI race, it can also cause a lot of political turmoil because then the competition is seen as not as like a peaceful exchange and like, hey, you have this to offer, we have this to offer, but like they're stealing something from us, they're stealing our place in the future. And we're really advocating for working together. It's completely okay if not everyone says, hey, we're completely strong in AI, but we have to work together with what they're strong at. Maybe they have many people who have a really social drive, and then they can work with other countries, other people from those countries together on, hey, how can we implement your view and your unique skill set on your view on these global problems into how we contribute to solving global problems with AI. So I think it might create risk, but I hope we all stay in a global exchange and we work together and exchange all these skills we have, because in the end, in this globalized world, we're all in this together.
Thank you. I think we've discussed so many challenges, but Anna, I would like to wrap up with a question I think is on everyone's mind around the world. AI risk. I want you to give me one AI risk that keeps you up at night or that you keep a close eye on, Mohamed. Like, because we spoke about privacy, security, so on, but what worries you the most?
We all talk about hallucinations, and we talk about AI taking a path that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And I think I would say that this is the risk that I see from our side, from a government perspective, because we can't afford to make a wrong decision when we're serving customers. And I believe that there is a solution to this. We have to have a very clear human in the loop policy.
Okay.
And when I say human in the loop, it doesn't need to be public servants and employees in the government, because the citizen can be the human in the loop. If we can devise an approach that can show the customer what exactly the AI did or the agent did, that would help ease up the this risk and reduce it significantly, because they can then raise a concern if they say, okay, it did this and I don't agree with it. I don't want it to do that. I didn't ask it to do that. That's where I think the risk that I see from our perspective. Of course, cybersecurity and privacy is something that we have across the board, whether it's AI or other, and we have to ensure that we always control that risk.
Thank you very much, Joel.
I mean, I do spend a lot of time thinking about AI literacy, the access to information. I think to some degree, you know, we're in an era, there's so much information available, but the ability to curate high quality information to inform these conversations is really important. There's a lot of people who are, you know, taken by many ideas about AI that I think are closer to science fiction than actual science. And so like grounding that in reality, in a rigorous analysis, factual analysis of the technology itself, I think is quite important.
Thomas?
For me, just the rejection of AI adoption.
Oh.
That's what I fear. And not because we're a technology company, even for everything that we've discussed, if you don't use it, you wouldn't know if it's hallucinating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know what to fix a point, right? If you can't fix a process, if you don't know what it is. So I think the collective use, but setting the agile feedback loops for you to correct, to make known, put the mitigation in place. But all that is completely irrelevant if everyone rejects the adoption of AI. So for me, I think for the progress of the society and how we need to adopt it.
Yes. Carolin?
I think for me, it is reskilling, coming back to AI literacy. It's reskilling because we live in a world which is changing so fast, and humans sometimes don't really like change. They know they like their environment which they're in, and especially for older generations, this kind of reskilling and making them use AI in their everyday jobs is something which keeps me up at night. And when talking about AI from a philosophical perspective, I think we always have to really take a step back and say, hey, where do we see AI? How do we see AI? What do we want it to be? Because when talking about AI, it's like a black box, because it's not constructed, it's grown organically. I don't know if organically is like the word here, but these kinds of things, I'm interested in which direction we're heading.
Thank you very much. This was very insightful discussion. I really enjoyed the chat. Let's give our beautiful, amazing speakers a round of applause.